Hi, this is John Rowell from the Rowell Report. We've seen information come from CNN about the so-called vacuum tubes being used in the Oreshnik. So, without being an expert in missiles and without having direct access to the circuit boards for the Oreshnik, we're going to have to move kind of in a historical fashion to show that vacuum tubes basically have been eliminated from all modern missile systems. So exactly why CNN is putting out this narrative, it's hard to say. But anyway, apparently there was a debris field from the Oreshnik, and from that they pulled these components, this board, I guess the circuit board, and this little tube. So they're telling us that this is from the Oreshnik. So let me go back to the beginning of the period of rocket development. First, we have the V2, which was developed by the Nazi scientists. So here's part of their guidance system, and this brought signals to the V2 computer. So this V2 computer processed all that information to steer the rocket and maintain it on an upward trajectory without spinning out of control, without flying in a circular fashion, so to make it go up and then come right back down to its target. So that was what the V2 did. Now, once the World War II ended and the Nazi scientists were involved in the rocket program, the V2 rocket program, were split up between the Soviets and the USA. Then we started to get parallel space and rocket programs that were developing in the Soviet Union. We finally got to, through the initial phases of those developments, to get to the R7, which was put in service in 1957 and was used for the Soyuz program. So you can see here part of the circuit board from the R7, and it does have vacuum tubes, but they certainly don't look like tubes in this image, but they're there. So you have a hybrid system between transistors and vacuum tubes, and so we're slowly transitioning out of the vacuum tube period into the transistors, and then from the transistors we arrive to the solid state devices. But here we have, I believe, from 1960, the guidance system for the Pershing missile. So this does have vacuum tubes, but they don't look like glass tubes, kind of like something you see here. So anyway, they do have vacuum tubes. They just don't, at least in this image, you don't see any tubes that are glass. You see some kind of material there, but certainly doesn't look like this image of what supposedly Ukrainian investigators found in the debris field of the Oreshnik. So again, here is the Pershing missile guidance system, and then we move on. Here is a Soviet space program guidance system. So you obviously can see the various tubes there. So none of them look like this, and I don't see any tube in there that is glass. So we see more over here, and it's hard to say exactly what some of these tubes do, but there's vacuum tubes in there, obviously. Now the Oreshnik has been apparently developed out of the SS-20, and the SS-20 was the ICBM that was eliminated from the from the Soviet arsenal in what year was that? Okay, so in 88, right before the fall of the Soviet Union, they got rid of all their SS-20s. Well, the Oreshnik is seen as the first stage of the SS-20. At least one expert has chimed in about the Oreshnik. So the SS-20 is going to have hybrid integrated circuits. It's going to have solid state measuring to avoid the old gyroscopes and accelerometers. So, and it also will have the hardened, the radiation hardened integrated circuits. So this is kind of this is from Northrop Grumman. This is obviously not a Russian missile, but you'll see kind of modern circuit board for guidance. So, and anyway, in the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine website, we have this article back in 2022, shortly after the beginning of the special military operation. And it says, modern Russian cruise missiles are equipped with electronics developed in the 60s. So anyway, they show us these electronics, so you can take a look at that. And you can see the, I believe, the vacuum tube and the old style circuit board. So they want us to believe that the most modern missiles that Russia is using is just a combination of old tech kind of modernized and put into service. So they even have here more information about the guidance, and so it looks, it looks like really old technology that's in there. And so I think the whole point of this article, or this broadcast from the CNN, where they showed us supposed parts from the Oreshnik missile that were taken from, back in the early stages of rocketry and missile production. There's, of course, an agenda behind that. But anyway, they show us a KH-101 circuit board. So anyway, that's the closest I can get into that. So you can see here is the kind of modern circuit board on a KH-101 that are supposedly using. And again, this is what we're being shown, these transistors, I guess, old style transistors, these big fat transistors. So anyway, you see this board is much cleaner, much smaller, certainly much lighter, and it's all very compact. So you don't see any tubes like this at all. And so anyway, the conclusion of this video is that there's going to be a narrative being put out about the Oreshnik missile. Why? Because the Oreshnik missile hit a target in Lviv, and they're not going to show us the results of that missile. Where they're going to give us, they're going to feed us information about, well, it's using vacuum tubes from the 40s and 50s. It's using outdated technologies, and the whole purpose of that is to tell us that the supply chain in Russia is completely constrained with all the measures that they have taken, all the sanctions. So anyway, they're pulling vacuum tubes out of, old devices, and then just re you know inserting them and reimagining how these old vacuum tubes can be used in modern technology. So I wouldn't believe for a moment that this came from the Oreshnik, and that is my recommendation, at least, because if you start to look at the modern circuit boards, the integrated circuits for missiles, you start to get something much different, much cleaner, much flatter. And so, again, this article here from 2022, again, this all just feeds into the narrative that the Russians are inept, they're incapable, the West is superior, Russia is inferior. So anyway, I'll conclude this video there. If you have any comments to make about this whole promotion of this narrative of, well, we got these old circuit boards, from the 50s and 60s, and we got the vacuum tube from the 40s and 50s, then the conclusions that they want us to reach and all that. So if you have a comment to make about that, please do so below. I'll leave links to all these sites I pulled this information from in case you want to go there yourself and take a look. And again, I appreciate your view, your like, and if you did like this video, please share and subscribe. So thank you for joining me for this video on the CNN information that or misinformation. I certainly consider it to be disingenuous to put out information supporting the idea that vacuum tubes are being used in this modern missile system, the Oreshnik, because those were phased out back in the 60s, and more precise, more durable, and more protected electronics have been used since then. So why would they go back to vacuum tubes? It makes no sense. But anyway, it feeds into a narrative. So anyway, if you have any comments to make, please do so below. And I look forward to seeing you back for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.